And we're live. Awesome. So, hello everybody and welcome to Women Who Code. We're really excited to have our January panel in February. But we typically have a panel in January talking about things related to job searching and things like that. And we're really excited to have a really great panel of people to talk about all the things about finding your job remotely. In a few minutes, we're just going to go through a little bit about Women Who Code first. So this is the Women Who Code Atlanta network. And we're really excited to be using this new platform. Our sponsor is Euler, and I'd like to invite Diana to come and talk for a minute about what Euler is.
Hello, everybody. I'm here. It's the other camera. Hello, because I'm also on the right next to Beth as a moderator, just in case she needs my assistance. Yeah, my name is Diana Rodriguez, and this is a new platform. It's basically a platform to help event organizers, speakers, and attendees come to events without having to battle Dragon, zero installs, hassle-free environments, removing all the distraction factors, and making it easier and friendlier for everybody to attend events. So I really hope you like it. And if you don't, I'm really open to your feedback as well. It's exciting to be here with y'all. So really looking forward to this panel. Thank you, Beth, and enjoy.
Thank you, Diana. I appreciate it. Appreciate all the help too. So what is Women Who Code? If you've never come to an event or done anything with us, Women Who Code is a global nonprofit. And really what we're looking to do is to help women accelerate their careers in technology. And we have chapters all over the world, and it's a really great organization. So we are made up of people in a variety of roles within technology, and this is kind of our distribution. We tend to have a lot of engineers because we focus on being a technologist and how we can be better technologists. So our whole pitch is that we need to help each other we need to help each other become better in technology and helping careers and things like that. So we all know that the technology industry is severely lacking in women. So if you know people, help them get in. And we in Atlanta have a pretty good idea of how to have local programs. We typically, before COVID, had in-person events, and we've moved many of them to being virtual for the time being. We are really, really hoping that we can get back to in-person events sometime soon. This is our typically we have an in-person meetup, and this would be our event of the month. We would have a panel discussion like this. Sometimes we have tech talks, we've had workshops, we've had lightning talks. Typically it is an event where you come and there is a program, and when we meet in person, we usually have a really nice meal and some nice beverages too. So we miss that a lot. And typically we meet at General Assembly, which is at Ponce City Market, and they're very generous and give us a nice room, and we have a really nice setup. We also always feed them, so they welcome us a lot.
That's great.
Typically we would have a monthly code jam, and that was really just come get together. Some people would use that as a time to work on something, a side project, or getting ready for boot camp or being in boot camp. But it was a time where you could come and kind of focus on working on something yourself or get help from somebody. Or if you had just recently learned something and you really wanted to make sure that you understood it, teach it to somebody else. And that's something that we've decided not to do virtually. virtually. It's just that in-person interaction is really special, and we didn't think that we could do a very good job doing it virtually. So we hope to get back to that sometime soon. We also have local offshoots that have a similar event kind of in their geographic area, like Vinings and Roswell and things like that. So we'll restart those as we're able to, and as it's safe to do so. We have moved our lunch online, and that's been really fun. Both Valarie and Laura have been really great about helping host these events, and it's just a chance for people to get, and Sandra's come to those, it's a chance for people to get online. It's once a month, and it's literally your lunch hour. So we've gotten to see a lot of people's kitchens and things like that, and wherever they are. So that's been a lot of fun. And typically it's meeting other people. Sometimes it's people who are looking for some help. Maybe they have a job search that is going on, or they're getting ready to start a job search and they want some help. Sometimes it's somebody who maybe is working on a project or just wants a reality check of something. So some really good connections have been made there. A lot of those connections kind of migrate to our Slack channel, which I'll talk about in a minute. And we tend to also do a couple of special events. We do celebrate International Women's Day, and we do typically celebrate Hacktoberfest, which is in October and is a month-long event. And we've done a variety of things, almost all of them, including Erica kicking us off with a really good how-to on how to participate in Hacktoberfest. And that's been really successful. One day we'll get everybody together with their Hacktoberfest shirts and take a picture. So this year for International Women's Day, we are going to do a video collage and hangout. So this is an invitation for people to create a video and share it with us. These slides will go up and we'll post it in our Slack channel and things like that. But this is kind of what we're looking for from people to talk about. You don't have to talk about everything. These are just some general questions, ideas, topics for you to talk about during your video. And please, if it's too short, that's totally fine. And I'm pausing because I talk really fast so people can read. And this is just a place where you can find us. A lot of people find us on the Women Who Code website, and there's a place where you can look at, every city has a page on there, so you can find a list of all of our events there. You can also find us on Meetup, and that has a list of all the events that we have. And then Twitter and Instagram are a great way to follow us. Slack, we have a really, really good Slack channel that has a lot of areas where people can do things like post job. A lot of people are great about posting jobs that they see, or if a recruiter has reached out to them and it's not something that's a good fit for them, they'll share it with the community to see if anybody else is interested in it. It's also a great place for people who are looking for jobs to find people who have a relationship with that company, just all kinds of things. And then of course there's the Code Rage channel if you're having a bad day. So Slack is just a really great place to deepen those relationships. And with that being said, we're going to move into our panel conversation. And this is a list of all the people who are going to be on our panel. We're going to do some quick self-introductions. And we're going to go in order of the slide. So Sandra, you're going to be first.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Sandra Ramsey, and I have actually been promoted. Now I am an IT recruiting manager at Wahoo Fitness. I've been in the business. Thanks, guys. I was really kind of happy about that. I was part-time with them last year, 25 hours a week. And they were like, we'd really like to hire you full-time. So I was super glad to become a Wahooligan. I spent most of my career in staffing companies, which is just really stressful for a recruiter. And I finally got sick and tired of it. And so life is so much better on the corporate side. So we are, just to let you know too, we are planning to double our size in the next 3 years. And so we're growing, and we are definitely we are React, Node, MongoDB, AWS, everything. So it's a cool place to work. Great culture, great company, 10 years old, and we're just growing. So And I love to go RVing. I do.
That's awesome. That's funny. I was looking at some of those Airstreams, so
Oh,
have to talk.
nice. Those are great. Yeah.
Laura?
Hi, I'm Laura Batson. So yeah, I had a very interesting path to tech. I was working as a nanny and a teacher and all these other things that have absolutely nothing to do with computers. But I really got lucky because I really, really love developing. I worked for a teeny tiny startup. And then most recently, I worked for CNN.com under the umbrella of Warner Media, under the umbrella of AT&T. So like one of the biggest companies in the country. And now I'm back, going to start again at another teeny tiny startup. And yeah, so it's been a really, 2020 was just the worst year ever, right? And I'm glad it's done. I'm hoping for exciting, awesome new things this year. And yeah, I'm excited to start a new role. And I'm very excited to add the senior to my title. It does absolutely nothing. It changes nothing whatsoever, but it means the next time I go job hunting, I get to put that on my resume. And isn't that a bonus? So happy to be here.
That's awesome. I love how, Laura, you're either really small or really big. There's no in between.
I wanted in between, but you know, anyway, I'll talk about that later.
What can you do? Thank you. Keisha.
Hi, everyone. I'm Keisha Beverly Ebbison. I am a recruiter at Microsoft and for the Atlanta region. Woohoo! Atlanta is growing so quickly. I moved from Seattle to come to Atlanta for the purpose of doing events just like this, meeting people in the community, talking about what opportunities we have open from an engineering perspective. I've always had a laser focus on diversity. Since I've been at Microsoft and I'm hitting into my 8th year at the company. So for me, I know that like our journey is still continuing, but it's been really strong. And like Atlanta with the purpose of finding phenomenal female engineers to add to our wonderful new location. I can't wait. And so we're going to be located in Atlantic Station. And I'm excited about that because all the shopping and all the great food and like Christmas time, I got to go down there and go ice skating. So like for me, Atlanta has been nothing but a dream. So I'm excited for tonight's event to talk about what we have to offer, to meet some really great people. I'll drop my LinkedIn in the chat, and I saw a lot of people dropping their LinkedIn's and as well. So all those messages that are in there, like feel free to drop them in my inbox for sure on LinkedIn, and I'll be able to retrieve them because it's kind of hard in the chat to keep up, but I'm excited to keep up for the long haul. So that's me. And I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated too. So if there are any members of Delta, it'd be awesome to meet you.
That's awesome. I'm excited for you to see Atlanta once actually people can go out again. Because I know you moved here over the summer, right?
Yep, I've moved in a pandemic. I interviewed in a pandemic, so I have definitely some really great feedback around that from my own experiences, and that I'd really love to share with others too. So I'm ready. This is going to be a great night.
That's awesome. Thank you. And Neha.
Hi, everyone. I'm Neha. I'm a director of engineering at GitHub, and I work on some of the open source tools. If you've gotten a chance to hack on anything, these are some of the tools that help you work in open source on GitHub. And so I've been working remotely at GitHub for the last 3 years, and throughout that time I've been hiring. We're especially hiring now. So if you're interested we're looking for mid-level engineers and senior level engineers, so both. And I'm based in San Francisco, but we're remote. Well, everyone's 100% remote, but we are normally remote. Even after the pandemic, we'll be remote as well. So I'll drop in my LinkedIn if you want to connect about anything that you're looking into, or if you want to connect about the things that we have in common. Maybe it's traveling, or Miami, if you're from Miami like me, or interesting things about pairing. So
awesome. Thank you so much. So we're gonna start with a little bit about kind of what's different, and we all have a lot of people have alluded to having completed their job search during the pandemic and things like that, and changing jobs and moving. So I wanted to start with our two recruiters and ask kind of what is different about your job and how you're reaching out to people. What's different about kind of those connections? Are you seeing people do different things? Are you expecting different things from people? And Keisha, let's go with you first.
Okay, so for me, I feel like the world just opened up, right? And so, like Neha said, being able to find anyone, anywhere who's interested in an opportunity, for me as a recruiter has been an absolute blessing, right? So from now, I can actually meet someone who may live in Kansas who's interested in Atlanta but wants to stay in Kansas, or someone who's in Atlanta who's interested in staying in Atlanta for now but may need to move in a couple of years. And now that we've become so remote, we're truly open to talent from across the board. So for me, when I'm searching for candidates, I'm truly looking for people that are in our market, right, in the Atlanta area, but then also those who may have ties to Atlanta who'd like to return, and then also those who, are so close to Atlanta, like just anywhere in the Southeast region. And before, thinking about Microsoft being in Seattle, we really didn't have a ton of opportunity, right, to find people where they were and to, remove them from there and bring them, to Seattle. Now we're bringing the opportunities to them. And so for me, from a searching perspective, it's really great to be able to find anyone, anywhere who's interested in an opportunity that's closer to potentially their home. So that's what it's like for me.
Awesome. Sandra?
Yeah, same for me. We've definitely, we've never been so structured that you had to be in our office all the time, which was really kind of nice. I've got a Reno office that they were like that. It was actually a company that we acquired. And with COVID, what actually ended up happening is I was able to go all over the country searching for the best people. So as long as they're open to supporting the PST timeframe for them, it was good. So yeah, I love it. And a lot of my positions right now they're open to somebody being remote. And it just like, it does, it literally takes your pipeline or your funnel from here to here, so you have a bigger talent pool to search from.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
now we're going to rectify my mistake. And Valarie, can you introduce yourself?
I can. Hi, I'm Valarie Regas. I did a web development boot camp, much like Miss Laura. I guess I finished that up early in 2018 and decided I didn't really love web development. Really enjoyed DevOps though. Thanks to the women I met through Women Who Code, I got an internship and ended up going permanent the last 3 years with my company until Friday, Airbus. I start Monday at Salesforce and have had to go through the job hunt during the pandemic. And it's been a fascinating experience. Can't wait to complain about it. And yeah, so, but you know what? It's over now. That's all that I need.
Awesome. Thank you. We got reordered. I apologize. Now that we have everybody introduced, I will keep everybody's name up here so that people can keep track of things. But I do want to talk about, as a candidate going through the process in a pandemic, what was different, because both of you have experience looking for a job, especially right out of boot camp, and knew kind of what the trials and tribulations of that were. Now moving into doing a job search during everything being remote, what was different about that?
Sure, I'll go first. So I have to say, I was thinking about this, and the actual interviewing process for me was better. Not so much the getting to the interview and finding all the good resources, because that was harder. Because before it would be, okay, I'll go to a few meetups in person, you chat with people, you meet new people, you make these casual connections, and sometimes that leads to great job tips. But so that part was harder, but the actual interviewing was amazing because I could literally go in sweatpants and there was no worry about, do I get to the right location on time? Am it was just very convenient to be right there in my house, to just hop on a web chat, be done, and be able to totally relax at home, and to have a lot of that pressure and that anxiety about getting to an interview taken away has been very nice. And I was very intimidated before I started the job hunt virtually, because I was like, this just seems so weird to try and apply for a job with people that I've never actually been in the same room with. But the more I think about it, that there's a lot of other things that were not great, but having a lot of those just logistics pieces taken away from the interview process was really great. But yeah, I do miss the being able to, meet people in person and to actually like ask them directly, hey, so what do you do work? Are they hiring? That's much more awkward over Slack.
Did you feel like you were able to get a sense of the company without actually being physically there?
Yes and no. I definitely, that was one of the things that gave me some reservations, is there isn't that same window into how the day-to-day goes. But also I realized that I'm still thinking of a company in terms of being in their office. And for the foreseeable, we don't know when, hopefully soon, we don't know when we're all going to get to go back to reality and, see people. We just have no idea. So for the foreseeable future, I'm more focused on, all right, what is my interaction going to be like with these people over video? Is that successful? And is that going to give me what I need? And, I had some considerations and some reservations about my current role, just for various reasons of like, yeah, I did not feel like I was going to be like super excited about the company culture. But I also was like, well, am I going to be like that anywhere? Because right now, even if I'm working at the happiest, awesomest company on the planet, I'm still going to be doing it from my basement. So
Valarie, what about you? It's still pretty fresh, right?
Yes. Yeah. I hate it. I actually, the whole not going to an office and interviewing was really difficult for me. I feel like someone with 3 years experience on the job doing some sort of development or engineering work that's different than DevOps would be a lot farther along. But the nature of what I do, I have to learn so much about so many things that it takes longer to progress. And to be blunt, I count on using my personality to get people to give me a chance so that I can prove that I can learn and I can prove, but you have to get that foot in the door. And if you look at my resume, I mean, I don't even bother submitting resumes online. If I saw a job that I wanted, I found someone who worked there that I knew and got an internal link, because the couple of companies I just submitted a resume, I got the rejection email within like 5 minutes. So, I found that I did things like, if I had to get dressed and put on real pants and go to someone's office and present myself, I wouldn't have overscheduled the way I did. There was 1 week where I was just accepting all of these first interviews, and there were days where I just woke up and thought about what was coming up and just wanted to curl up in a ball and cry. Yeah, so it was really difficult. Like, my technical acumen is coming along, but more slowly than one would expect for like a regular developer. And I really just rely on my personality for people to say, you know what, she's a great culture fit. She's clearly bright. We can teach her. And you can't do that really convincingly over the laptop. It was very difficult for someone with my personality type to be, distant. I really prefer the face-to-face human interaction. Did 2 of 10 stars, do not recommend.
Fair enough. And Neha, from a hiring manager, what are you doing differently, or what's being done differently that is, I know that you're always remote, so has the pandemic made a difference?
Yeah. For the most part, because GitHub was hiring remotely, fully remotely beforehand, not much changed. But I think like what's interesting that we've seen on our side is that now for the first time ever, we have like a lot more people who have experience working remotely and kind of know what they're signing up for a little bit, right? Because that experience is kind of consistent, whether you're working at a place that is, no matter what company you're working for, you're probably working remotely, right? And so we have like a lot more people who are interested and open to working remotely, have a little bit of experience with it. And something that I remember when I was interviewing 3 years ago was that I was talking to these people who are so used to working on Zoom and like kind of understood the protocol and like had gotten the pairing part out of the way and had that experience. So what we're trying to do from a hiring manager perspective is to kind of acknowledge the fact that a lot of our candidates are going on Zoom a lot and are having this like overload, and trying to give people options. So like one of the most recent things we did is you can either, and we're trying to work on, so this isn't fully there yet, but like what we're trying to work with for candidates are you can either do like a 1-day experience, or you can kind of schedule at will, and you can go and kind of stretch it out during the week, depending on like what's best for your schedule. It's a huge advantage of being able to work remotely that you have that option, right? You don't have to come in for a full day interview, but we still want to give people the option based on what they prefer. So that's like one thing that we're working on right now. And that was an adjustment that we were especially interested in making because there is just like Zoom overload, and like people are getting pretty exhausted by all of these remote interviews. We used to be the only, like one of very few who are doing that, and now it's everyone alongside with us too. And I think that one thing that we have decided to keep on doing is that even though a lot of times you can do a remote interview, and that means that like you can do your take-home assignment and it can take a long period of time, we've tried to do our best to limit that interaction. And so we've tried to find, at least like for our technical part of our interview, we've tried to find an exercise that seems as similar as to what your day-to-day looks like. So instead of you doing a coding exercise and submitting it and it being like as long as you want for 24 hours, we actually have you like comment on a PR and like kind of do your review as if you might a pull request, so that you can kind of practice the code review and feel as similar as you might feel like when you're actually working alongside with us. So we've tried to keep our technical exercises short, even though I think working remotely allows you to kind of extend that period of time.
That's really cool, especially the whole, I think that working remote is one thing, but working remote the way we are now is completely different as people have kids at home and have, you know, just all the things that you can't send everybody away and just work anymore, right?
Yeah,
So.
exactly. Like I was working remotely before, but now so is my partner, so is anyone else in the house, right? And so there is still like a learning curve and an adjustment that like that we've even been observing, that we like want to have allowances for, and even that means that might affect the interview as well, in a way that like we all kind of understand. We try to also do our best to show that on our side too, right? So it's like we're all in it together.
Have you found that you've changed any of the way that you do onboarding?
So onboarding is something that we have changed. Traditionally, when it for our for GitHub, you would basically be fully remote, but you would come in person to do onboarding, and we would do like a mini summit once or twice a year in person, so you kind of have that like interaction. And so we have gone fully remote for onboarding, and that means that instead of seeing like the team photo of like everyone together, you see like the Zoom screens of people like getting together to learning, and it kind of, at least in some sense, like it does set you up for very clear expectations of what it's going to be like for the next few months. And I think the other thing that we can kind of do a little bit better is that because everyone's working remotely, we can allow for people who have like different schedules, and parenting, like who are her parents, who have like pets, who are caretakers, they can kind of do that. And then the other flip side is that by flying everyone in, we can kind of isolate the time zone. And so that's been a big adjustment too, is that if you're onboarding, you're kind of in this time block, and you have to all be in the same time zone, which might not be your natural time zone. People are much more used to flying in and kind of adjusting, but it's a little bit harder if it's your day-to-day and all of a sudden you're doing, you know, Zoom meetings from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. or something like that.
Yeah, a friend of ours did a boot camp, and she did it remote, and the boot camp was in California, and so she was on the boot camp from like noon to 1 a.m. or something. I don't know how she did it, but yeah, I'm sure the time zone thing makes everything a little bit crazy. And then I can't even imagine once you add Europe into that, and then, Australia and New Zealand, gets pretty crazy to manage. I did want to also ask, we had some questions about the technical interview specifically, and how do people feel about the standard tests and things like that, whiteboarding algorithms and things like that, and how do you make it, what's valuable, and how do you decide what's valuable in that technical interview process? And I don't know if that's something that that recruiters are helping to define, if hiring managers are helping to define, but whoever has some input in that, that would be great.
So, go ahead.
I'll jump in and then let someone take the technical side of the questions, if that's okay. So from a Microsoft perspective, I will say the interview is pretty well-rounded, right? So it does have the technical aspect, and we're using Codility in terms of doing the technical screen virtually, right? And then also we are using Teams, which is our platform where we'll be able to have that conversation. So those are two types of technology that if you don't have at home, right now, you can definitely download and get some practice in to feel comfortable, during the interview. But I do believe that for our interviews, it still has the conversation piece, which I think people, because you're interviewing in a pandemic, and that's what I was going to say from my experience, I feel like as soon as the camera turned on, I was like, ready, right? And I'm like, and I just wanted to like start talking and not necessarily jump in with listening. And, it was really difficult because it's a time, it's a space, you're thinking that you have to get through a bunch of information before it's over. And so for us, I know that there's definitely still the conversation of why you're interested in this role, right? Why are you interested in the opportunity to do something different? What are you passionate about? So in preparation, I think it's really smart to prepare across the board and show your communication skills and that research that a lot of people still do when it comes to the teams they're interviewing. Like all of that is still highly important in the Microsoft process, as well as if you don't know, because you don't have the ability to bump into someone who works there in the lobby to ask them a question. Here's your opportunity to ask those questions, in this platform in the interview. So we're a lot more conversational. But then when it comes to the technical piece, like I said, those are the pieces we have. And as a recruiter, it's my responsibility for you to feel prepared. So I do send out links for you to prepare. There's tons of resources, like you mentioned, within like this group and talking to others who have interviewed. But to prepare for technically, I'm sure there's someone else too that can share what are some of the strongest technical attributes you can find online or through different organizations to prepare to code, because you will code in a software engineering, interview. In a PM interview, you may have conversations mixed with a little bit of coding. So it'll be good for someone else to answer the technical part. But we're still too. So.
I would like to jump in and just as a counterpoint from the interviewee position. So I know that like when I was first out of boot camp, and even the last time I was job hunting, that's the biggest, scariest part, right? It's just like, what do I pick to study? And how do I focus on that? And, this job looks great, but they want me to know something about Google Cloud services, which I've never touched before. So let me spend today trying to learn all of that tonight. And this round of interviewing, I really decided that I have enough skills that I feel confident that I don't have to panic. That does not mean I didn't do research for any of my roles. I definitely took the time to look up companies to try and find advice from other people, comments about what their interview process looked like. But I also said, all right, I know how to code in JavaScript and React, and I am marketing myself as a mainly front-end developer that has an interest in getting more full stack back-end experience. And when I go to the job interview, if I'm asked questions that are not a part of that and I fail on them, then either A, the company is going to say, well, that's okay, because we were just asking to kind of judge where you were, or B, that's not a good company for me to work for, because they are not really paying attention to the role and not interviewing towards that role. And I turned down a few interviews with companies that I was just like, because the bigger the company, I feel like they have, like Microsoft, for example, has that of like, hey, this is a huge, everybody knows this company. Having this on your resume is a big stamp of approval. And sometimes they want that candidate to be so hungry and to be so ready to prove that they are willing to make that, that extra mile of effort to get it done. And I was kind of like, yeah, it's not me this time. And I'm just going to skip that interview. And that was a personal choice for me, that I felt confident that there were other roles out there that I could take. And some of that is just based on that whole difference between the traditional computer science degree and the boot camp. And I'm not going to say one way is better or one way is bad, but it's definitely, for me, I know that if I go into a place that's going to be heavy computer science interview, I'm not going to do great. And that does not mean that there are not jobs out there for me. That does not mean that I am not a great developer. It just means that I don't have to take that interview where they send me the list of things that I've never seen before and try and study them overnight to be prepared for this one interview for one job.
Something big that changed this round of job hunting was, it would have been, pre-COVID, if someone had given me a technical challenge and said, you've got 2 days to do this, or a time test, do this in the next 24 hours, I probably would have scrambled to do it. And, found time to be alone somewhere, stayed late at the office or something to get away from my kids. But with 3 kids in the house, working full time, my partner's a technical architect. He's home all day too. I openly said no to several challenges. Like, you're not paying me for my time. You're asking me to build you something, and I can't do this in the next 24 hours. Like, it's not going to happen with my kids home and the added responsibility. I now have 3 full-time jobs between keeping this house from falling apart, raising my children, and working my actual full-time job. And job hunting did turn into a 4th full-time job.
Oh yeah.
And it was hard because on the one hand, I really wanted the right role, but I just had to tell myself, if a company is so hell-bent on getting this in a certain amount of time that's really restrictive, they're not going to understand my obligations when I'm an employee.
Right.
So that's not the place for me. And I did, like, throughout the job process, there was one person who straight up asked me, how I felt I could ever compare productivity wise with some child-free single person fresh out of college. I'm like, well,
what?
And I was like, well, I can't. But how do you expect a 20-year-old child to have the life experience and wisdom that I have at 40?
Right.
Like, give and take, pros and cons, babies.
Wow.
And so I don't know. I found, like,
Unbelievable.
Getting my first job out of the boot camp, I was pretty much like, cool, so I'll do anything that you want me to do. Just please give me a job. Right. And, 3 years later, it was a lot different to be able to, I think that the COVID really put life in perspective for me in a lot of ways, and what really matters and what my actual obligations are. And it was a lot easier to say, I really, really want this job, but not enough to, tell my children that I can't talk to them for 24 hours because I'm going to be holed up in the basement while my husband solo parents 3 children. Not fair to him either. Yeah. So that's something to consider.
That's some good perspective. Neha, can you talk a little bit about the technical interview process and technical challenge aspects?
Yeah. I can also, so I think, like, something that's really interesting from the 2 of you who've, like, been interviewing is that there's, like, a big theme around boundaries, right? Knowing what you want when you're going in, knowing, like, what you would, how much time and effort you would like to be spending for this round, and, like, having a confidence in your worth. And I think that those are really important things to, like, ask yourself. And as you look at companies that are going from small size to larger size, you go from very custom tailored, very movable to more generic. And as someone who's kind of in the middle, right? So GitHub's, like, I would consider no longer a startup, obviously, like, acquired by Microsoft, and is, like, at this level where there's, like, 2 really important things to understand around when it comes to a technical exercise. One is that, like, this size company and going lower, the hiring manager still has like a lot of control over what that interview looks like. And so you'll see that they're pretty different, and that they're potentially custom tailored to what we have. You'll get a hit or miss, right? You might get a generic interview across the board. And that means that like, if you do the generic interview, if there's multiple teams that are hiring, you might have access to multiple teams, or you might see this other scenario where you'll see a very tailored interview, maybe not going for the standard linked list or trees or whatever, and having something a little bit more specific to what you do. But that means that if the interview doesn't go well there, if you want to interview with another team, chances are they have completely different processes. And so while they might be more considerate of like what your skill set is and what your time is, you might have to do another interview. And so there's just always a give and take, right? Like the more generic you go, you can get access to a lot of teams, and the more specific you go, and potentially like ones that require less really like intense technical skills or something that you might get from a CS degree, that means that like that would be for that team only, you know? And so I'd say from what GitHub tries to do, or I would say actually, I can't speak in general for GitHub, right? Because of this specific thing. So I can speak for what we're doing for our team. And that is that like we start with a generic conversation. You do a take-home task, which should be, I think, an hour or 2 hours maximum. And you can choose whenever you want to start that window. And then we just ask you to follow the honor code for that. And then afterwards, what we do is we take that exercise. And now that we've seen how you think on your own, how you do your own research and use whatever resources you want, and how you communicate what you were thinking, which is like a huge emphasis for us, especially working remotely. Then we go into the follow-up, which is like the round 2 of the technical exercise, where you get to work with some people, and we look at the code and we work together and we see if there's that chemistry. And so that is not generic across the board. I know for GitHub, we definitely do a take home before we do the round 2, where we get to like meet you in person. But you know, this is my 5th job. And and I was also self-taught a long time ago. And so after interviewing for so many companies, you'll just see a lot of different ways across the board. And sometimes I choose like, you know what, I'm just gonna like sit down and I'm gonna spend a week or 2, a few weekends, or I would like go in person and, you know, find other people who are interviewing, and we do some practice standardized interview sets. And for me personally, I've gotten jobs mostly at places that didn't need those standardized ones because I don't have a CS degree. But you never know. You only need to get one job. So it's about just like the numbers game. It's about talking to a lot of people, filling out that chemistry. And not all companies do require those like traditional data structures or recursive algorithms that like you need, but some do. And it's really up to you what you want.
That's really good advice. I wanted, we have a lot of questions coming in, and I want to pause for a minute and take a little detour and ask each of you for some specific advice. So if you are a new graduate, let's say you just graduated from a boot camp, or you're just graduating from college with a CS degree, you've never had an internship or anything, how do you break in? Because it's a lot easier once you've had your first job, right? I think that both Laura and Valarie, I know the difference in your confidence level of having had that first job and how you have that confidence now. And I think that's really, everybody has that, right? After you've been there, you have a better idea. But how do people, I just want to make sure, because I think this is the hardest thing. The hardest thing is when you're brand spanking new, how do you get in? And I know it's a hard question, so I'm rambling a little bit to give you a chance to think about it. But if you have some advice of how to do that, that would be fantastic.
I do. So I used to work for a company called Soltech, Soltech. They're here in Buckhead. They're actually in the Salesforce building. And we were big boot campers. So the owner of my company, she was actually on the board of directors for several of the boot camps here in town. And what we would do is we'd go down on demo day, and she would sit there with her laptop and she would watch these demos, and she would cherry pick the best people to come and interview with us. She would go and meet with them then, you know, at their demo day, and then she'd invite them into the office. And I don't know if you guys have ever been to Soltech's office, but it's freaking phenomenal. Go to the 24th floor when you get to Salesforce and just look to your right. But anyways, I mean, what she always looked for, and I loved it, she looked for people who were passionate about what they did, They were hungry for, and thirsty for more knowledge, and they were very well spoken. And one thing that's weird, one thing that was weird for her, she didn't want to shake anybody's hands that had sweaty hands. She was like, it grossed her out. But anyway.
She's ahead of her time, really.
Right. But I love the fact that she would always give new people an opportunity to come in, and you want to make sure that when you go in as a new person, that you've got the support that you need from the team and from your leader to be able to support you, because you need that. So I love that. And so yeah, that's what I would actually recommend. Just being passionate and hungry about what you do, making it come across in an interview. Maybe talking about extracurricular things that you do on the side just to promote yourself and your technical ability. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
You bet.
Laura, you want to go ladies first? You want to go first?
You go first, my dear. I went first.
So I think that for a lot of us, and I would imagine many of you watching that are in the middle of that first job hunt are thinking, if I could just get in the door, I could prove things. I could show them, how enthusiastic I am. Getting in the door was the hard part for me. I actually sometimes in a talk used my own resume as an example of the worst resume I've ever seen. And for me, there was power in asking. I was, one of the greatest gifts my mom ever gave me was teaching me that the answer is always no if you don't ask. And so I ask for what I want. And I try to be polite and never demanding, but I will ask. And it looked a little something like, okay, how do I ask people if I don't get in front of them? Okay, let's sign up. Women Who Code is looking for lightning talks. What can I talk about? Where I can mention I'm looking for work. And I did. I spoke at several conferences before I was employed about why you should hire former stay-at-home moms, which is completely self-serving, but I'll own that because it's also true. But it was a way to get myself in front of the community and say, hey, right here, Mr. Kata. And I mean, it looked like, tweeting, hi, I need a DevOps internship. Someone please make me one. And I had this great interview process with the local company. The accountants ended up not signing off on it, but I still talked to some of the people that I met through that interview process. And now they're part of my network. I definitely recommend, if you're up for it, it's a lot of work, but if you're up for it, just like slam through the wall like the Kool-Aid man and be like, I am here. And sometimes that looks like getting on LinkedIn, seeing a job you want and seeing who posted that and reaching out directly to the recruiter before you apply and say, hey, you're looking for a mid-level. Well, this is my first job, but here's what I have to offer. And here's the advantage of hiring a junior. You can train me to do exactly what you want, the way you want it. I'm, a sponge ready to soak up information, but I'm an empty cup. I haven't learned bad habits at another company. And convince them. Yeah. And you can pay me a little bit less. And if you give me a raise in a year, I'll be loyal. But I just, sometimes it takes being bold and putting yourself in front of people and dealing with 50 rounds of rejection. I mean, there was one day, my husband was like, how much wine have you had? And I was like, well, this is my 5th glass, one for each rejection email I got today. It happens. The rejection is awful, but if you can just keep going, it really is a numbers game. Be like a creepy guy at the bar and just ask 100 people. Because one of them will hire you. Don't let rejection get you down.
Right.
Laura, redeem me, madam.
Love you, Valarie. Yes, that absolutely 100%. Try and try again. And yeah, I hate job hunting. It is such a just soul crushing experience because you can be the best developer out there and you can still get tons of rejections. You can still have a bad interview. And it can be really tough. I know that for me, it was a numbers game. That's how I got my first dev role. I will also say, and I get asked this question a lot, like when we're hosting lunches and stuff, I always recommend that people look for ways that they can get that first tick on their resume. It can be an internship. It can be volunteer work. It can be maybe a job that you're sitting there going, I don't actually want this job at all. This is terrible. They're going to pay me terribly. But I'm going to take it because it's going to get that mark on my resume, and I'm going to have something to show. It's going to be professional work, and I can move forward from there. And I mean, that is literally what I did with I took a role that was contract work that was extremely I didn't even realize how underpaid until later, because there was some misunderstandings. And, you know, it was basically between childcare and commute, I was basically paying that person to work for them for a couple of months. And I could not have afforded to do that for very long. But because I had that contract work, because I could say, hey, I have professional experience, that put me in a better position for more jobs. And I got hired and was able to continue doing that without having to worry about paying this person to work for them. But yes, and I always recommend checking out if you have a career history. You know, prior to getting into tech, I worked with kids, and I'd also had a background in sales before. Try and use that. If you have that background, try and look for places like that and say, hey, you know what? I used to be a teacher, and now that you're doing this education software, I think that I'd be a great fit because I have this background in the product you're building. And then, yeah, if nothing else, look at volunteermatch.org, I think. There's always places on there that are looking for help. You can volunteer to help build somebody's website. You can volunteer to, you know, help them administrate their database. You can volunteer to teach code, ref code. Go and help and put that on your resume to just have your something to make you stand out in that sense.
Super good advice. I want to jump into a little bit from a recruiter standpoint. What are the things that you can do, especially somebody new, to be attractive to a recruiter who's looking at tons of resumes every day? And how can you help? How can you be noticed? How can you stand? And also, as somebody who's going through the process of applying for a job, what can you expect from a recruiter once you have submitted your resume or reached out on LinkedIn or whatever way you've started the conversation?
So I'll jump in for this one. Yep. So the first thing I will say is definitely be the creepy guy at the bar. I think that's the best analogy ever. Definitely be that guy. As a recruiter, I also want to say find your person. Over the past 8 years, I've been I've been thankful enough to be the person for a lot of people. And I noticed a ton of people just added me on their LinkedIn. Once you find your person, that person that's invested in you, we'll keep searching for you. Find your person and find your company, and then be really confident in the skills that you have, that you've attained, you know, through the programs that you've went to, the schools that you attended, and then also just keep working at your craft. Like you mentioned, everything that you're doing is for a true purpose and to follow your passion and to find the right role that's for you. But you need that person that's going to push you into the spot to be able to be interviewed. And that's the recruiter's role. And there are tons of passionate people just like me that are available online. But what I would tell you that's even more important than that is that, especially for us at Microsoft, I know that we literally do review the candidates that are applying online. So I know that people are becoming exhausted by going on LinkedIn and sending out, 100 messages to recruiters and others, leaders, similar to Neha, to see if they can find their way in. And that is, it does work to some extent. But there's another set of us, like half of my day is still spent in the job requisition looking at talent. So you have to apply online and you have to apply with your most updated resume. Your LinkedIn needs to be up to date as well. So you have to make sure that you're prepared for the opportunity, even though you've done the schooling portion and the internships and the previous work experience, you have to be able to translate that into something that we can take with us forward to be able to put you in the opportunity. And so what's most attractive for me when I'm looking at a resume are all the key buzzwords that I hear from the hiring managers for the things that they're looking for. So I'm a full stack developer. I'm a back-end, engineer. I really focus on C#, SQL. Here are the technologies that I work on. I know someone mentioned, what do I know about, like, what was iOS or whatever the case was, but what do you what do you know about? Because I do filter my searches to find people who are listing the technologies that they are familiar with, right? And so how many people are going to be familiar with Teams as a product they worked on? Probably no one, unless you worked on Teams. But if you worked on Skype in the past, or if you worked on Zoom type technology, like, or if you, whatever it is, you need to make sure that the technologies are truly listed so that I can search to find you. So that's what's most attractive, is if you have the words that I've heard the hiring manager express to me are words that they're looking for in their potential candidates. So making sure that you're talking and coming to forums like this and listening to Neha say, you know, really, I'm looking for, you know, this type of engineer. Or even when you were studying, and someone said this too, there are programs that you studied that you thought were for you, web development, or it wasn't for you. Right. And so making sure your resume reads with the work that you actually want to do, because in a lot of cases, what happens is I call someone and this is not what they want to do, but what they did in the past. So making sure that the direction is really clear in the conversation that you have going forward. And I saw someone say, I'm at the point where I would just take any job. I've been there too. But you do not want to get into the interview and say, you know, I'm really excited about this opportunity. I was wondering if you had you know, something a little different, because they don't. That's why they're there. They're there to talk about that particular opportunity. But I'll wrap up by just saying we do not walk away from undeniably great talent, you know, in our organization. So if you do walk into an interview that was meant for a sweet software engineering role, and you do show so much interest and passion toward PM work, but you could be a software engineer, trust me, we are not going to say there's nothing for you. We have over 150 positions that are posted right now. And that's when they come back and say, let me connect you to so-and-so. So doing the best you can in the interview process, you know, focusing on what was attractive to us and showing your passion, like my other recruiting partners and sisters, I guess in this case, said, I really do think that that's what's going to be most attractive going forward.
So I'd like to say something too. I love it, and I teach people to do this. If you feel like you're a really good fit for the position, I like for people to stand out amongst the line of people that actually got submitted to the job. And what I mean by that is I want somebody to go, hey, Sandra, I saw you had a position posted on LinkedIn or on your website. I'm a good fit for it. Here's the reasons why, X, Y, and Z. Or they know about my company and what they do, and they're passionate about fitness, you know, and cycling or running or whatever. Those are going to be the people that are going to get an appointment. You know, I send out an email where you can just click on a link and it'll get you to my calendar. But those are the people that kind of stand out to me. I'm going to start there first. Even if I've got 50 resumes, and I'm the kind of person that I go to the oldest resume all the way up to the newest is how I typically do it. I just feel like it's fair. And I do review every resume. But if somebody says, hey, Sandra, I'm a great fit and here's the reason why, I'm going to set up an appointment with them. So it's kind of standing out amongst your peers, I think, is ideal. And there's a couple of different ways you can do it. You know, you can definitely send a note over to a recruiter on LinkedIn, or a lot of times too, in these big corporations where you don't really know exactly who posted the position or what's going on, you can make the first page of your resume your cover and tell them why you are a good fit for the role. And I can't imagine a recruiter not liking that. So I love it. I mean, it's actually my favorite thing to do. And I tell people to do that over and over again.
Wonder if how important a cover letter is, but it sounds like that's a good opportunity to make sure that you are really connecting your experience with the job posting. Mm-hmm. And so yes. I wonder, how far does that letter make it? Does it make it to the hiring manager? Does it make it to the interviewers? How many people does it communicate with?
So, you know, whenever I set up an interview on a calendar invite, because it's all Google for us right now. So it's just like I will attach the resume as well as the cover letter so that the hiring managers, or if they're in a panel interview with other developers or whatever, they get to see that. I want them to see the passion that the candidate has. So yeah, for me, it goes with the calendar invitation. I think that's really important.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Keisha, Neha, do you have any cover letter or how to communicate that good fitness between you and a job advice?
I would say that it depends on the job. I've seen like some companies that I've worked at care about the cover letter. I know for me, if you provide a cover letter, it usually gets uploaded. So I get to interface with these potential candidates through Greenhouse. And so if I go and I look in and I see who I'm interviewing with, I can see whatever information's been provided, right? That might be a resume that's attached, that might be their LinkedIn profile, and that might be a cover letter. Often the majority of my candidates don't actually provide a cover letter. And so it's not something that I'm attuned to looking for. There's an occasional chance that we do look for it, but I would say that it depends on the job. And then as if you work with a hiring manager, or sorry, a talent partner, then you can ask them if the cover letter matters, right? And they can directly tell you whether it matters. And so you can kind of optimize your energy that way. And like if someone were to ask me, should I provide a cover letter for your position? I would say, don't worry, save your time working on a project or focusing on like whatever you want to focus on. And that what we look at the most for hours is that because you can apply online, we have a bunch of questions and we ask 4 or 5 questions and we really look at those written responses. And honestly, it's just hard to know what like matters the most, since you can always ask. So whenever anyone messages me on one of my group Slack channels and they ask me, do you have any advice for like interviewing for your particular position for hours? I want to make sure that you're filling out these answers, because that's where we screen people the most, is the initial written answers to the questions that we provide. So I really do think it depends.
Doesn't it drive you nuts when they don't answer the questions? Like they put a dot.
We reject a lot of people based on people who don't answer the questions. Actually, it's like our rubric is kind of like, have they made a best effort at the answer? Do I feel like I have something to go off of? And the no is like they didn't answer the question, and we do weed a lot of people that way. That's a great way to get your foot in the door, is to answer the question.
That's good to know.
Yeah, we don't, I don't review. So in the technical space, so like I said, I've been a recruiter for 8 years with Microsoft. So in the non-technical space, I found that the cover letter was very helpful. Because I needed like some additional data of some sort, or like the connection between the previous work history to what was happening. In the technical space, though, I don't really feel as if for my purposes of pre-selecting a candidate that I need the cover letter to do that, because the resume really does read for itself. A lot of people have also sent me over portfolios and whatnot. Those are somewhat helpful, especially like if it's in the UX or design space, like where I'm not 100% familiar and the hiring manager, again, asked for that type of candidate. It is helpful because I can just forward portfolio and say, how does this look, to you, and based on what you're looking for. And I think depending on the company, and I think a lot of companies, especially now in COVID, they're willing to have the conversation that the cover letter used to have. So they're willing to say, hey, they have talent sourcers like my team who say, let's have a conversation over the phone for 15 minutes. And that's probably where you need to put the preparedness, is in that phone conversation, and then also making sure everything is relative in the resume.
We're getting to we're getting to time, and I just want to throw these 3 questions out and let people kind of answer whatever portion of it makes sense. So, one, Keisha, you talked about the importance of preparing for that telephone conversation, that sort of initial screening, which I'm sure there's a version of that, be it whoever it's with. How do you prepare for that? Secondly, if you have 3 components for a technical interview, you have your resume that shows your experience, you have projects that you may be highlighting either on your resume or on a profile or something like that, and thirdly, you have whatever technical challenge or project you're being asked to do. How do those things weigh and balance each other? If you're going to focus your energy on something, what aspect of it should you focus your energy on? I guess that's really 2 questions.
Yeah, I think the best way to focus your energy is in that phone conversation, from a Microsoft perspective, at least I can say, because we're gonna have the opportunity to really engage and ask you the questions that are necessary to figure out how does your background align to this role. So what you want to be prepared for is taking a look at your resume. You'd be so surprised when interviewers ask questions about your background, how many people kind of stumble, right? And it could be because, again, COVID-19, 3 kids in the background, you're answering the question very quickly. Like I completely understand That's why I always say, have your resume, handy right next to you. And so you can talk through it. So when someone gives you the big, broad question of, so I noticed your background in tech started, 2 years ago. Tell me how it started, right? Automatically it's nice to look at, and you can do that in COVID, right? You can look at your resume and you can say, okay, well, 2 years ago is when I started, my coding boot camp, and you kind of go from there and you build. So I would say definitely preparing to show and demonstrate the work that you've done in the past, connecting that work to the work that the hiring manager is looking for right now, connecting to your future in the role in the company and what you would like to do going forward. That's a lot of preparedness right there, right? You can't prepare for everything. And so being agile and open to whatever the next question could be. Gone are the days where you could pre-script your questions to a hiring manager, where you could say, oh yeah, so tell me a little bit more about your company's stance on blank. Like they literally have automated that, right? Directly into the online services, so you can read about it. So now it has to come from you engaging. And so the more you're prepared, the better you'll engage, because if you don't actually prepare, what happens is you have to think too much, so you're not able to have a conversation. Does that make a lot of sense? So you're trying to run through what you practiced, and then now you're not able to think about, like, what did that mean? So can you go a little deeper for me? And now you can't do that because you're still ready for the next question, because you're not prepared enough. Once you're prepared enough, you feel confident, right? And you're able to sit back and say, okay, well, here's what I've done. I love all the metaphors, the two ladies who have just been through the interview process. I wish I would have met you before, because I probably would have hired you. I would have found someone who did DevOps stuff, and I would have literally put you in an interview process myself, because that realness, right, is what companies are looking for. So to answer your question, I think that's where it lies. The portfolio, sharing a screen to do a presentation, unless you feel good about that and savvy on how you're going to get that done, then don't do it. Because what happens is you put yourself, in a position where it's not going well, and it rolls. It rolls. So if you feel better, like, say, hey, I'll send you over my portfolio. Can you take a look at it and we'll chat about it? If you're like, my portfolio is not the best, I want to tell them what I could have done, then you present it. And then you show them everything that you could have done and maximize it, and you work together, because that is the actuality of what it's like to be on the team. So that is actually a positive thing to do, is when you present it with the need of help, but you have to be confident in what you're presenting. So that's all I had.
That's awesome. I think that there are kind of 3 technical areas that people focus on to get to the interview. And so one of them is your experience that you're highlighting on your resume, experiencing your skills and what you did at jobs, and be it languages or DevOpsy things and that whole world. I'm sure there's a whole language there, Kubernetes and all those things. So you've got a bunch of stuff that you're highlighting there, right? And part of it's the lingo and knowing what it is and demonstrating that. Then there's the whole, and I think that people who are just coming out of boot camps and college probably have a lot of projects, and that's what they have to demonstrate, right? Like, I built this. You can go look at it, it runs. And oh, by the way, there's some tests too, yay. And then the third thing is that a lot of companies are starting to, or have been doing for a long time, is either a take-home challenge or some sort of challenge that they're going to ask people to do. And that would be to get to the actual interview itself. The technical interview is a whole other thing, whether there's whiteboarding and things like that. But just to get to the interview, if you had a week and you were going to spend it getting ready, how would you divvy up your time between those 3 things? Pretending like you didn't have anything else to do.
I'm whiteboarding all day. I'm whiteboarding all day long. Like the leap code stuff, like I'm doing that all day, if that was me, because I see that is the only place where there's an opportunity for people who are very junior in talent, is in the coding capabilities. So if it was me and that's all the time that I had, I'm spending the entire time practicing, going over, coding, figuring out like what type of what areas where I need to really go deeper. I'm talking to people like, again, like Neha and others, that have been through a lot of coding interviews and saying, okay, what have you seen? And then I'm practicing on Codility and I'm practicing on LeetCode and I am literally practicing, because that's the one thing that you can't schmooze is the coding part. You can schmooze the entire other pieces of the resume and of the interview, but you can't schmooze the coding capabilities at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's not possible. And if you have been frustrated yourself when practicing to code, when you get into the interview, the interviewer will see that, right? And then they may give you some guidance. And so that happens in interviews all the time for us. And so once you get a little bit of guidance, you have to be able to react to that guidance and say, okay, how about if I try this? But if you practice enough, you've tried enough. And so you know the feeling of, oh, wait, this might work. And that energy and the smile and the look and all of that comes across.
Yep.
So I would say practice until you can't practice anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That is very good advice. So I'm going to say that we have so many questions that got answered that we didn't even hit the tip of the iceberg. I'm going to suggest that we set up a channel in Slack where people can take
Great
these
idea.
questions, and we'll start the conversation there. And anybody who is not already part of Slack, there's a we'll put it in I think it was already in the main channel, the form to get into Slack. And somebody asked, it takes a minute to get into Slack. You just get approved. It's not a big challenge or anything like that. And also a lot of people put their LinkedIn. I see Keisha's right there. And so I encourage people to connect with our awesome panelists and so forth. I want to say thank you so much for your time, your expertise, sharing your great stories and advice and examples with everybody, and thank you very, very much, and have a good night.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you.